Hey there, everybody. As I've been sharing out my timeline with my visions, my spiritual life, and all that good stuff, I've come to a point where I've shared the time before I left Denver to move to Montana and a couple of spiritual experiences I had there where I felt that I may have been contacted by what we call God, what we call Jesus, as they put it to me. And the next thing I did was I went out to the Lakota reservation for one of their ceremonies. And so you might wonder, what religion am I? Why am I going to all these different things? Um, and it's like I don't really claim to have any one religion, but we're for the most part born into a Christian culture, so it comes with the deal of being born here. To my family, those of us who go to church go to a Christian church. Those of us who have a religion are Christian. Otherwise, we have, I call them Christian atheists, because we still have Christian values and all this stuff in our culture, even if you claim to be atheist. And a lot of atheists I know get upset and they yell for Jesus, right? So that's how you know you're still Christian even though you're atheist, right? So anyways, I thought it'd be fun to say, Christianity goes back to the Judaic people, right? I think Judy or Jude is the root name for Jody. If we look at nomenclature, maybe I'm from the Jodaic. So the Jodaic branch, I think, is a modern branch, right? So I have a modern worldview at this point that they could not have had 2,000 years ago or so, when a lot of this stuff was being put together, a lot of this rhetoric was being created. And so being part of a modern age, comes along with that is scientific advancement. Like, we have a much better point of view as far as, like what the planet looks like in a solar system and a galaxy, and we have a rough idea of what a universe looks like, but it's really hard to tell because we're kind of in it, and like, we'd really have to go on a big space trip to see what that looks like. So it's really hard to say exactly what the universe is shaped like, but we're starting to realize that we're part of a bigger system. That, we got our solar system, and it seems like a big deal to us because, we're part of this planet, everything's big to us, and the world looks pretty flat. So until about 500 years ago, people didn't want to go across the ocean and fall off the edge of the world because they didn't realize the earth is curved and it just keeps going until you hit another continent, right? So that's why I think it's also a funny story that those European dudes went over to the Americas and thought they were in India. And there are more tan people with long dark hair, so I guess you could see their mistake. But anyways, we belong to a bigger world than we thought we did some time ago, and along with that is the possibility of life on other planets and them having human life and having culture and beliefs, and do they have a God or not, right? So if there's any such thing as God and Jesus, okay, then the whole universe is going to be subject to that same reality. And so this is true with the laws of nature, whatever natural law may be. Now, this is something that religious people might not like to hear, but from my point of view, laws of nature, what we call natural law, is primary to everything else. Nothing can go on without natural law allowing it to do so, or even having impact. So it is said that the reason we exist is because we must exist. We exist because we must exist. So when you look at the origin of life, it's a difficult topic. It's really hard to really figure that out. And so much of what we have is intuitive knowledge. So I believe that what we call evolution is really an unfoldment process, that there could be a code given to us which brings about the shape as we know it as far as biological life goes. Okay, so the universe is one great living system, and you are a living system. There are three components we have in common. And I've made videos to try to explain this a little bit more, but I want to touch on that to point out that in order to have a living system, you must have a few important ingredients, one of which is conscious presence. So that's how you know something's alive, right? You notice it's moving all by itself. It must be alive, and it's not the wind blowing, it's not nothing shaking the ground. You see something moving all by itself, it's probably alive because it seems to have a mind of its own. Now, when we talk about plant life, that's another story. We're starting to find that plant life may have a type of conscious presence and awareness that they're somehow they're experiencing life. Okay, but that's how you know something's alive. It seems to have a mind of its own. So that seems to be a key ingredient in biological life. Now, some people more to the atheist side think there's no creator, everything's random. It's like, well, not necessarily, because if you look at it, like everybody has the same parts, like if we dissect everything, it all has the same parts. So there's some order to life, and it seems like the driving force behind that order is conscious presence. And so, so yeah, you're right. There's still chaos in the universe. That's I feel that natural law comes first, just because that encompasses everything from the chaos side to the order side. And so if we go back to the idea of yin and yang, first you have the singularity, we are all one thing. But then within that structure might be, what we look at as the yin and yang symbol. The Taoists come up with that, so thanks for that. That's intuitive knowledge, and there's proof that there's something to it, that when you zoom in on atomic activity and you see atoms exchanging subatomic particles, sometimes they look just like a yin and yang. So this is intuitive knowledge coming from people before we had a better scientific point of view, realizing that the universe works this way all the way around. Now, that's not necessarily a map of the universe, but the concept of duality, having two sides to everything, we're experiencing that here. But the wisdom we get from the Christian side is the Holy Trinity. So what they're telling us about is really the three components of the universe that we must have to exist as we do. And so, okay, so if we go to the part that's the living part of the universe, I like to say the living universe, because, I'm not talking about the whole dead part too. But to have the biological life in the universe, there's sort of a pattern that everything has, and I can bet you dollars to donuts, if we go from planet to planet, we're going to find plant life and animal life, and there may even be human life out there, and there might even be ones that are so advanced they've already achieved space travel, and they're looking in on us, but they might have rules and policies saying it's not okay to intervene or something like that. Like, we're not supposed to go out in nature and pick certain things and kill certain animals. You're not supposed to pet the big fluffy cows, that type of thing. So they could have policies in the galaxy, but other planets are not allowed to interfere with our planet. See, so who knows? We have yet to find out. So that's why we got to look at the process of unfoldment, is that we went from single cell life forms to this great complex thing with a big smelly brain, and we can make all this neat stuff, right? Because we're scientific and intellectual and all that good stuff, unlike any other animal. But once human beings emerged on Earth, we still had to go through some phases of unfoldment. And the interesting thing that I've learned most recently, thanks to Mark Passio brought up, is that our brain has three parts. That as we emerged as the animal, the most advanced animal in the cold-blooded era would be the dinosaurs, the reptiles, right? So that's the most, that was like the king of the earth at its time. And then when warm-blooded critters emerged, along with that came the secondary piece of our brain, which is the limbic. And that seems to bring along with it more of a warmer heart, so it seems to be, facilitating to be able to love one another more. So that's the funny thing. We often say that someone's a reptile because they seem to be self-centered and they don't look out for others. But people are warm-hearted if they care about others. So similarly, being warm-blooded seems to be, along with that comes being more warm-hearted. So there's more love where there's heat, right? So something about warmth. We often say that somebody can be a warm-hearted person and stuff like that versus a cold-hearted. So it's in our language. Being warm and cold seems to imply how much love, how capable you are of giving love, right? If you're warm-hearted. Now, the third component of your brain is the neocortex. That's what makes us human, and that's what makes us able to apply math and science and all that good stuff, have such complex language skills and things. So, not to mention, you gotta give lots of thanks to these. Your opposable thumbs. A lot of animals are lacking because they say dolphins are so intelligent. Yeah, well, they got everything but thumbs. Oh, just kidding. Not kidding. Okay, so anyways, the unfoldment of man on Earth, once we did have the neocortex, that's when we're human. We're able to think at a certain level. We're able to make moral decisions, as it is said in the Urantia book. The Urantia book's a lot of fun, and I felt like reading that gave me tons of confirmation. I was talking away to my friend Rosie. She's like, Jody, you got to read the Urantia book. You sound like, you already know some of the stuff that's in it. Now, okay, so the universe is one great living system, and so the three components are going to be frequency, energy, and vibration. Now, that correlates to our Father in heaven, the Holy Spirit, and the Son. So there's like a family there. So the Holy Spirit's really kind of the feminine aspect, So there's a yin and yang in heaven. How do you like me now? So anyways, we have those three components ourselves, So the seed of the soul is here in the middle of our head in the pineal gland. And you feel that I am that I am. You can say you are that you are, okay? So for whatever reason, hey, natural law is that it is. That is like laws of nature that just are. Nobody makes those. But due to the laws of nature, somehow this energy field exists, the conscious presence exists, and so those two things can exist separately. But then when they work together, you come up with the third aspect. So in the Holy Trinity, that brings some first personhood. That's probably the idea that this is our one ancestor. So if the living universe has within it this Holy Trinity, this is our original ancestor. This is where, all things come from. So the Big Bang Theory is a way to explain physical nature, where all matter came from, that we are in touch with, the stuff that atoms is made of. Somehow it must have all came from some one place, right? So the scientific community have a theory. They're still calling it a theory because we don't know for sure. Or it could be a perpetual cycle that all things come from one place, and that may also entail what we call spiritual energy. There's one great spirit that moves through all of us, and the original source of conscious presence, which is our Father in heaven, and that is present all the way throughout the universe, right? So just kind of like you feel in your body, you do feel present throughout your body, even though you feel like you're up here. Okay, now the next thing we have is at the heart, so that correlates with the limbic being at the heart. That's where we gain intuitive. So you can gain a lot of intuitive that way. So intuitive knowledge can come through the heart because the Holy Spirit is moving through the universe. So it's kind of like the wiring behind the board. That's kind of like the telephone wire. Remember those things? Now we use, satellites. Anyways, it's, the information travels on that energy. So what we call God is making frequencies that travel through this energy. So that's how the codes get out there and plant, a pattern on every planet. So that's a really good theory. I think that's how we get our DNA codes, is because of this universal system. Okay, now we're looking at this as a greater system. The stuff it's made out of might work a lot like a neural network, okay? And so information travels through this, so there's connections between how the stars connect to the center of the galaxy, and there's a way that the galaxies all connect into bigger systems. And so this could be how information goes down to Earth, and we eventually get the codes we need. And since we're in just the right position to have biological life, the outcome is due to two major things. It's like conscious presence is wanting to take shape, but at the same time, we are limited by the aspect of nature that's not on the living side of the universe. So the void itself is taking impact on the living universe, and that's why, we have to take the best shape possible to survive it. So that's where even the most high conscious presence, or what we call God, is still subject to having to survive nature. And that's why we have sacred geometry. Everything's taken a certain shape because that's the best way to survive in nature. And then thirdly, think of your center. Like, so if you do anything physical, like I do martial arts, they tell us you need to find your center because that's where your power comes from. But it's the center of your body. You could be lifted by your center. Okay, so it's the center of your body. So you kind of have the soul, the spirit, and then you have the embodiment, that avatar. So within that avatar, I require conscious presence moving all through it. It's in my DNA. There are codes coming from my DNA that tell me, you know, if I reproduce, that what the baby's going to need to be improved upon. So we do adapt and evolve to some extent, you know, like according to what our environment is putting on us. So we adapt and evolve according to our environment. But the process of creation, and I don't know if creation is always the best word, but it, you know, it's the word we use to explain, you know, where biological life comes from, is that it's sort of this desire to exist. So we're trying to take on the best shape possible to be able to function at the level we're at. And now, so it's like we've become fully matured, and now we're able to take on this information like no other animal on earth can do. So we're now taking on all this information, and so that's where it's built into us. And now what I was going to say about the Urantia is they tell us, okay, so we have this one ancestor. So within us, we have like a little piece of that ancestor. And it is called, in the Urantia book, the indwelt thought adjuster. The indwelt thought adjuster. I think it's kind of a funny phrase, but I can see what it's saying is it's that little piece of what we call God that's in us that gives us ideas. So it's like, you know, sometimes we get really good ideas, and maybe it's not because we're such a genius, you know, maybe it's just what you call in the air, because people around the world get the same idea around the same time. So I feel that as we're getting to a certain level and our maturation, then we start to catch on to ideas like discovering electricity and the combustion engine and things like this, you know. So it may not be just a human discovery by itself. It may be something that has been around on every other planet that has achieved human life, and we're tapping into knowledge that's already out there. So that's a theory I've heard about people who make inventions, is the technology's already there. We just have to discover it or realize it, right? And so anyways, realizing that we're part of a bigger system is a super important key to the Jodaic belief, right? That my belief is that, sure, you know, there is a truth about the greater universe that is very difficult for us to discern because we're so small. So the only way we can really experience that is through intuition. That's where, you know, maybe before we reached the scientific age, we went through a spiritual age for that reason. Maybe that's just how we work as we're growing up as a human species, going from being just big babies, you know. So as big babies, nature's providing for us. So we were able to survive by finding something to eat this whole time. And then we're getting to a more advanced level where we can think and talk to each other. And I'm kind of thinking what's going on here is there is an age where a lot of people are receiving information in a spiritual way through the limbic center. And so that could entail, you know, being tuned into what we call the Holy Spirit, okay? So that spirit is like a type of material that information can travel on. So the conscious presence aspect of the universe is letting information come and go on these lines of energy, lines of communication. So that's why you want to improve upon the Holy Spirit. It's what allows us to talk to God, right? Because that energy is what we need to communicate through. So you also want to improve this energy between you and people around you. So I've talked a little bit about spirit law in another video, like where you want to improve upon your relationship with your neighbors or anybody you're involved with, so you're never afraid to communicate, and you communicate openly and clearly and in a higher way, you know. So that's a fine stretch goal, right? So that's what is spiritual is that is perceived through spirit. So that now the soul part of us is the conscious presence, and that's kind of like broadcasting. So I'm broadcasting, blah, 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 blah. But if I shut up and listen, then I'm also receiving. So that's what could have been happening. People may also have experienced communicating with otherworldly beings. That's very possible. I kind of believe in that more now that I've gone into visionary state and I've experienced receiving information that is remote to me, and also experienced some time travel or being able to see the future, things like that. It's very possible that people back then, living more simple life, living close to the earth, were able to receive information through the spiritual energy and learn it through their very own intuition, as well as even space travelers who land and communicate with us. So we might have been receiving information that we weren't ready for yet when they started telling us how the world was created, right? How the universe was created. And so they had a pretty good idea, but they didn't have a way of knowing what outer space really looked like. They had some degree of knowledge of outer space that we have now. Really changes everything. So now we can use that information as confirmation. So it might be old and it might be undereducated. Okay, so these people didn't have the scientific advantage of being able to see in outer space and know how we're part of a solar system and that type of thing, right? So that's what makes it kind of interesting. So like, okay, it's easy to just become a hater and say, let's say you're Christian, you can just hate everybody else's knowledge because yours is the only one that matters. And well, that's not fair, because all these people around the world for all these ages have been receiving spiritual knowledge, and they've been doing their best to share it. Now it might get, I call it humanized. There's a lot of stuff where we add to it that stuff that's really not necessary. Okay, so you have to be able to look past that. It's kind of like a smoke screen. So like, we're getting valuable information, but it's being clouded up with human information. That's where we let our monkey mind get in the middle of what's being sent or distributed to us, right? So that's where, like, I know some Christian people think that if you do Vedic stuff, like my Kung Fu teacher said their parents were really worried that, doing Shaolin Kung Fu and having a connection with Buddhism and Taoism could be satanic because it's not Christian. That alone, right? So, so that's something we used to laugh about, is how can this be a bad thing? Because if you're doing breathing and meditation, you're just getting more energy, you're getting more oxygen to your brain cells, you're learning to correct your posture, and we'll even tell you, if you come to our classes, that, whether the magical stuff exists or not, whether there's psychic energy or something that we're supposed to be imbibing here, doesn't matter if you believe in it or not, or even if it exists or not at this point, because you're learning good posture and deep breathing. And to calm your mind down, like, what's wrong with that? But even then, if you don't know the energy's there, it's still, you still benefit from it, just like oxygen. Like, you don't need to know the oxygen is there to benefit from it, right? So it's not like if you don't believe in the oxygen, you're gonna die. Well, same thing with the cosmic energy, like if there's life force energy around us, and you don't want to believe in it because it doesn't make sense, doesn't matter, you're still benefiting from it anyways. Now if you learn about it and learn how to manage it, you can actually benefit from it more. So that's where self-evolution comes in, is when we learn about our environment and we learn how to adapt to it. That's where evolution comes in. So we are made to be self-evolving. See, we're already self-designing and self-replicating. Why not be self-evolving? Because, even conscious presence at the highest level, what we call God, what we call Jesus, even they have a learning process. So anyway, so it's not safe to hate other people around the world because they're different, because we're all getting a piece of the truth in our own way. And so most people are already aware that we have an ancestor, like the Native Americans that call it our great-grandfather. I think even Buddhists talk about that we've had a father, but he left us. But then people have a spiritual understanding. I think even the natives here in the States saying there's one great spirit that moves through all things. They're talking about the same thing, Holy Spirit, right? And then if you do go to the Vedic people, I think that they're very spiritual just because They're teaching you to breathe and meditate so that you're going to benefit directly from the spirit energy around us. So that's what being spiritual is, maybe paying more attention to spiritual energy, so it's not the same as exactly, well, it goes hand in hand with, cultivating, improving upon the soul, because that's what you need it for. But it just really helps you to just focus more on that particular aspect, breathing, meditation, trying to attain higher consciousness and expanding your awareness, all lead to being able to communicate more and receiving information more, right? So nothing wrong with that. So how can you hate that, Now, what Christianity brings with it is the mention of the Holy Trinity. That's what information they need us to spread is so it's really hard to imagine, this is something that happened 2,000 years ago, and the coming and going of Jesus Christ, right? So this is where it gets people fighting, So if you want to participate in Christian prayer, you have to have faith in this situation, that this situation happened, this guy came and went, and we're living in a time that's absolutely remote to then. However, there are people who have had near-death experiences and other such cases where they've been contacted by Jesus. I've talked about my grandma Smith. She flatlined for 3 days, and they left her plugged in under special circumstances. So normally they pull the plugs. They left her plugged in, so she was able to survive for 3 days, flatline, and come back and have a test that she was contacted by someone called Jesus/Michael. She wasn't sure which one. Well, the Urantia book refers to him as Jesus or Michael. Could have either name. And he showed her a lot of things, and he let her know that, I think he showed her the best churches in the world, and then showed her a church that was being built by people that literally didn't have the money for it. They should have been spending money to care for the family, but putting the money into the church instead, which shows a great sign of belief in forming a church. So nothing wrong with that. But Jesus said he really wished they would spend that money on their personal needs and not feel so obligated to go to church. So people shouldn't feel so obligated to go to church that it's a bad thing if you don't. So my grandmother says that she's a Christian, but not the kind that goes to church. So if you go to church or not, doesn't matter. The benefit that you should get from that is that you find a community, you find a family, and you put your energy together. So if you like the service and you like the people, you should be going, because it's good for you. But if that's not your thing, don't feel ashamed, right? So Jesus let her know it's okay if you don't go, but he took her back in time and showed her the crucifixion. And she may have been alive during that time. Maybe she's been part of that. So she was also getting reincarnation ideas, that she had had past lives, and this could have been one where she was present during this crucifixion. So there she was getting confirmation of Christian beliefs as well as Buddhist belief that we could be reincarnating, because Christian people kind of think you get one shot and you're going to go to heaven or hell, depending on how you do here. So who knows? I mean, this is stuff where we'll find out when we get there. But so we're gaining information in an intuitive level. So something like going out of your body by flatlining, or some people just go out of their body when they're not being threatened for whatever reason, and also gain information that's remote or higher and stuff like that too. So that's where, when it comes to why would I go to the Indians, it's because well, I grew up having psychic stuff in my life, and particularly the visions, and so I found out they have this thing called Vision Quest. They take dreams and visions very seriously as a source of communication, to get guidance, to get the the support of the spirit world, this type of thing, and and use that to make big life choices, making big decisions in our life. Or just trying to understand things, like my favorite story was his crazy horse when they were in dire times, and I think this is before the Custer's last stand, so the Indians knew the Americans were coming, the British were coming, or I don't know how they look at it, the white people were coming, and they knew they had to fight a pretty good battle, and so his crazy horse was kind of desperate to figure something out, so he did an improper Vision Quest, he didn't even go through the proper ceremony. Now, he's kind of known to do things in a backwards way. He does things that are kind of backwards, but it works for him. So that's the thing. So I love these stories because when he had his own ceremony, he went up on the hill and did a Vision Quest ceremony by himself. He got insight that helped them win the battle. But I think there were some people who didn't take all of his directions. You were not allowed to take anything from the soldiers was part of the directions, and some of the Indians took things from the soldiers. And so that may or may not have impacted what happened later. So they lost in the long run, but winning that battle is a big deal because Indians don't usually beat the whites when they fight like that, right? You know, because they the white man had guns, and I think the Indians may not have had guns, and if they did, probably not as many. So that's a big deal. So I love that story, and so I think at some point I was interested in finding some Indians, because like the let me see, the Hopi Indians and the Lakota really seem to know something that I need to learn from. So the next thing I want to talk about is when I went to Vision Quest, and I'll try to do my best to organize that conversation because I felt like I learned some very important things by going there. And on the way back, the shuttle driver that was taking me to, I think I was going to where you could pick up a Greyhound, was kind of lecturing me, you know, like about how, you know, I shouldn't waste my time trying to go to all these different religions, and I just really need to find myself a good Judaic Christian church, you know, like the one he goes to and stuff like that. And so people kind of give me the attitude that I'm like running around searching for the religion I should join. You know, maybe I should try them all and see which one I like best. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily what I had in mind. What I just really wanted help with was the visionary stuff, because it was driving me crazy, you know, like not having very many people to talk to who could help me. And so that's what brought me up there, you know. So as far as like what my spiritual beliefs are, is that, okay, so the universe is one great system, and everything in it is subject to the same laws of nature and the same potential that we have a Father in heaven, as they call it, what they call God, what they call Jesus, the Holy Trinity. Those three components are evident in some aspects where, okay, so yeah, we're experiencing duality within the whole. We're experiencing the effect of the living universe is what's given us life, what's given us form. But the effect of the non-living universe, the void. So when my grandmother flatlined, she said she was taken way out there and she could see the universe. So it is one great structure. And she said to one side is all life and to the other is the void. Okay, so what that's saying is, you know, it's more confirmation that we're dealing with that emptiness as a force. And that's what makes life cold. So we're, you know, if you have any idea what the solar system looks like, it really doesn't look like much. It's like you got the sun here, and then out a little ways is like this dinky little planet. It's like when you back out, it's like, whoa, we're barely there. You know, so life is such a great miracle that we're even there. So there's enough, you know, to have what we're experiencing, but at the same time, we're right out in the middle of outer space where it's actually, you know, far below freezing. You know, if you go into outer space, it's freezing out there. And so that's what we got to understand. The scientific part of ourselves is studying the environment, and we're constantly, and you've seen it in our lifetime, the things that we develop in order to prolong our life and to survive nature, you know, it's ongoing. And so that's the part of us that correlates to what we call God, believe it or not. So it's like saying that God is a scientist. Well, to some extent, yeah. So that aspect of the universe, we have to continually adapt to what nature is doing to us. So the void is that force in nature that we have to try to survive in. It's something that would kill us otherwise if we weren't able to have the correct structure. So kind of like if you look at the way our body is structured, it's all, you know, circuitry, right? Like if I cut a vessel and bleed out, I die. So I need to keep whole circuitry. So everything needs to be in order. So what I was going to say about chaos and order, though, going back to how do you know something's alive? It has conscious presence. And what does conscious presence do is it brings about organization to matter. Because if you like they've done experiments where you'll use a vibration and then have some sand on the table and you see the shape it takes. So as you change the frequency, the shape of the the patterns change a lot. So we call God as the aspect that's like the frequency that's, it's going to direct the vibration which is given shape to us, right? So that's where order comes from, is that aspect that is conscious presence, take an impact on that field of energy at the root. But then all these things exist simultaneously in all of our biological life, right? So that's where you see the correlation. So it's not necessarily like some great king up in heaven that we should worship so much. This is another thing Christians or religious people might not like to hear. It definitely something that I think should be honored and all this stuff, but I think the way people are worshiping might be more to do with being part of a uniform group. Like a lot of times what people are doing is just really trying to fit in with the group that they belong to, so they don't get kicked out. So that's where the part of us that's like an animal kind of takes over our mind and is kind of getting in the way of the true purpose of having a church, which is to be able to get together and communicate to God, because you got to cultivate the Holy Spirit so you can actually increase that energy. You can increase the amount of energy and how connected it is, and that's where people can start to hear what we call the voice of God, right? So that's what it should be doing for us. We should not be going to church and putting other people down for not, conforming and fitting in with our group and talking the way we do. That's kind of what people do when you're in middle school, right? That's for children. So anyways, so to talk about what my belief is, I think it's more of a universal spirituality, that there are things that are always going to be true all across the universe for everyone on every planet at every level, even like, so not only do we have people in other countries, we're all subject to the same spiritual truth and reality and the Holy Trinity, what we call God, what we call Jesus. And I put it that way because that's how they put it to me, and that's because these are words we use here on earth. And Jesus particularly might be only a word used in Christianity to describe the same thing that we are all subject to, is that we have one great ancestor. So whether we call it Jesus or Michael, maybe in other planets they named them different, but the idea is that there's within the living universe we have these three components, and we're all subject to it, whether we believe in it or not, whether we understand it or not, doesn't matter. So that's where, okay, so people try to tell me I'm not a real Christian. Well, that's just because I don't fit into their Bible study or something like that, or because I'm open to other religions and and I condone what other people are doing. So you can't as a Christian go to other people and tell them, you guys need to stop what you're doing and do how we do. What we should be doing instead is adding, so it should just be an addition to what they know, because the churches and the traditions that they belong to, it's how they're all connected to each other. So people are organized together in these ways. You can't just come break it up and change it, right? No one wants that. So what brings us organization is that conscious presence. And if you think about it, we say that you are an organism because you are an organization of cells, and cells are organized atoms, so on and so forth. And something's organic. If it's living, it's all organized. So the organized part comes from the force in nature that is conscious presence. So now that we know that conscious presence is a force in nature, and well, you are a conscious presence, and that means that you are a force in nature. And the more you get that, the more you help contribute in a positive way. Some people are just going through life, letting life happen to them and going, ho hum, that's life, Well, that's true to a point, as you go through life, life is going to happen to you. But what should really be going on is that you are happening in life, that what we are doing is we are happening to this world, right? So Jody is happening to this world because, hopefully I can use my power, right? Use my power as a conscious presence to have a good influence around me. So from, let's say I'm a designer, hopefully I start to design things that are good for the environment. The way we talk to each other, we can learn how to take care of each other on the physical level. We can learn how to take care of each other on the energetic level. So how we talk to each other is going to impact our spiritual bodies, So the way we're thinking is going to impact the spiritual body. So that's a lot of teaching out there to tell us how we need to change our mind and reconsider how we talk to each other. Things like that. So these are things you can do as a conscious presence, is think about the fact that you are taking impact on your environment instead of just happening by accident, then you just become a better driver, you know? So the bigger the vehicle, the better the driver, boy. So if you're really big and intelligent, please be a better driver, you know? Even if you have a smaller vehicle, maybe you want to be a better driver so you don't get run over, but, you know, you get this equipment, you get this brain, and you get this ability and this power that makes you a force in nature. Well, anyways, I really wanted to stop and talk about my belief and laughingly say it's the Jodaic religion, right? Because it's the religion of no religion in that there's basically universal truth that applies to everyone everywhere you go. And no one should have authority over that particular thing in such a way that you should go to a person to get the truth authorized to you. Someone might be an authority in that they've studied a long time and they have a lot to share, but when we give others authority over what we believe, that's kind of crazy. So you want to be careful about what you believe in. Has to do with what we're perceiving on an intuitive level, and that needs to be flexible and ready to change as we improve upon our point of view. Okay, so we don't want beliefs to be dangerous. We can let them be helpful. Beliefs like that, being able to imagine what the greater universe is like and what it takes to have the universe, to have these three components. Like, who knows exactly what goes on at the higher levels, but we have the intuition there, and we have things that are evidence to us that that we have these three components within ourselves. There needs to be frequency, energy, and vibration. At the same time, there needs to be conscious presence, sort of that energetic field that we call spirit, and we take shape. So we have an avatar, we take embodiment, so we take form. So life is just meant to be experienced, and it's built into us to keep learning as much as we can and improving upon ourselves. So it's really hard to say why we exist, you know, like maybe it's by accident. Like, we just exist because of natural law and that we must exist. But now that we're down here and we exist and we're doing all this stuff, our job is to just enjoy it, you know, to enjoy existing and exploring all the possibilities. Like, you know, it seems as if possibilities are endless, but they really are limited by natural law. But boundaries, we don't want to so much break boundaries. Boundaries that are unnecessary, yes, break those boundaries. But the boundaries of the universe are ever shifting and changing. And doesn't have to be static. So that's the fun thing about the truth. On some level, when it comes to truth in nature, that's pretty much always going to be the same. But the truth in being is always changing because of our ideas and wishes. That's where, you know, one day I love something, the next day I don't. So that truth can change day to day. So that's where changing is what keeps us alive. Also, you got to remember to keep changing. So we shed cells and regrow them. So why do we live just to die? Well, it's the same thing as blowing bubbles, like what Creator is doing. Making biological life is kind of like blowing them bubbles, but they're only going to go as far as nature let them before they pop and they die. That type of thing, because, you know, I think it'll be fun to discuss a little bit more, like, you know, people saying, well, there's no such thing as God, or bad things wouldn't happen, or vice versa. People think God controls everything and he wants us to experience these bad things. I think none of those are correct, that there's not a God that controls everything, but a God that, the God exists. The God that doesn't exist is a man-made God, right? The big giant in the clouds, you know, that type of God doesn't really exist. Maybe there are beings of higher order, or maybe beings that are higher evolved. That could be what we're getting them mixed up with, our space travelers. Those weren't really gods, they were just space travelers, okay? Or something like that. But the universe as a living system that has a soul and a conscious presence and all this stuff is a very good possibility. And that might be what we're supposed to find out and act on, and knowing that we are a living system just like the universe is a living system. And there's a way to tune into that and start gaining knowledge through intuition and start using that to ask good questions that lead up to good science. That's what we're really learning, is how to be a good co-creator. So we've been developing into a being that contributes to creation. And that's why we need to have an education like this, like, so that's where we don't want to ignore all religion and spirituality. If you're more to the scientific mind, you have the right idea, because you don't want to believe in a bunch of fairy tales, right? But if you look at it rather as intuitive knowledge, knowledge that was coming through to us before the scientific advancements occurred, then actually there's a great way to look at confirmation. It's an expression of human history and all that good stuff. So you don't want to like shut it out and ignore it entirely, and vice versa. People get to be either left-brained or right-brained, so there could be a left or right brain imbalance in this case, where you're just so scientific you can't understand even what spirituality even means, or you're just too spiritual and you think you don't need science. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter what you believe. Everything that's true in nature is going to apply to you either way. So that's where, how can I, sit through a Bible study because of the way I understand it. Now, if it's a good Bible study, of course, and I like the pastor or the minister present, it can be very interesting. So it's, the Bible is not a science book. It's more of a history book, and a book where people are sharing their testimony. And so you realize it's not a book that was sent straight down from heaven, on a cloud or something with an angel. It was a collection of people putting together all of their spiritual knowledge. So, let it be that it is. It's a book for confirmation and conversation. And it's a lot of fun when, you have the right group and you're studying anything, like from a Bible to the any spiritual text. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head, like Bhagavad Gita, anything like that. Why not, go through those books, crack them open, have a study group, and read them out loud. Does this bring you confirmation? Does this make sense to you? Nothing wrong with that. Anyways, we are all subject to the same laws of nature. We're all subject to the same possibility of these three components in the universe. That if there's the component of conscious presence moving through all things, the one great spirit is moving through all things. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. You're still going to benefit from it either way. And the more you know about it, the more you can benefit from it. And you can be you could be a positive part of that force in nature as a conscious presence that you are yourself. Anyways, you guys, I should get off of here. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings today, and I will talk to you soon.